"Get out of my showroom, you filthy old man!" The voice of luxury car dealer Sebastian Blackfield echoed through the pristine halls of Manchester's most exclusive automotive gallery. 70-year-old Jose Jota stepped back, clutching his worn cap, as expensive perfume and polished leather surrounded him like a fortress of wealth he'd never belonged to. His weathered hands trembled slightly as he tried to explain why he was there, but Blackfield's security guards were already approaching. What none of them knew was that in exactly 7 minutes the front door would open, and the last person anyone expected would walk in. But first, let me tell you about the old man they were throwing out, and why this moment would haunt Sebastian Blackfield for the rest of his life. Jose Jota had been standing outside Blackfield Luxury Motors for over an hour, gathering courage. At 70, his back ached from decades of construction work. His English still carried the thick accent of his Portuguese homeland, and his clothes told the story of a man who measured wealth in family, not bank accounts. He'd saved every penny for months, working extra shifts despite his age, all for one purpose. But as he finally stepped through those gleaming glass doors, he had no idea he was walking into a trap of prejudice that would explode in the most unexpected way. "Sir, I think there's been a mistake," Jose said quietly, his accent making each word careful and deliberate. "I have appointment. I call yesterday." Sebastian Blackfield, 45 years old, owner of 3 luxury dealerships across Manchester, looked at Jose like he'd tracked mud across a wedding dress. "Appointment? With whom?" "Our janitor?" The other customers, wealthy businessmen examining Ferraris and Lamborghinis, turned to stare. Some smirked. Others looked away uncomfortably, but none of them intervened. After all, this wasn't their problem, or was it? "I speak with lady on phone," Jose continued, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper. "She say come today. 2 o'clock. I want to buy car for my son." Blackfield laughed, a cold, sharp sound that cut through the showroom's classical music.
"Your son? What does your son do? Sweep chimneys?"
But there was something about Jose's determination that seemed familiar. Something about the way he stood, despite the humiliation. Something about his eyes that held a quiet strength. Where had Blackfield seen that look before? "My son," Jose began, but Blackfield cut him off. "Let me guess. He drives a taxi? Works in a factory? Face it, old man. Whatever your son does, he can't afford anything in here." Jose's jaw tightened. "My son worked very hard. Very successful. He deserve nice car." "Successful?" Blackfield's voice dripped with sarcasm. "How successful can he be if he needs daddy to buy his car?" The security guards were closer now. Jose could feel the circle closing, but he'd come too far to give up. His son's birthday was in 3 days. He'd promised himself he'd do this. But what was so special about his son that a 70-year-old man would endure this humiliation? "Please, sir," Jose said, his voice steady despite everything. "Just let me speak with salesperson. I have money." "Money?" Blackfield examined Jose's worn jacket, his scuffed shoes, his calloused hands. "What kind of money? Euros? Monopoly money?" Jose reached into his jacket and pulled out a bank envelope. "Real money. £50,000. Cash." The showroom went quiet. Even the classical music seemed to pause. £50,000 was more than most people had in their bank accounts, let alone carrying in an envelope. But where had an old construction worker gotten that kind of money? Blackfield's eyes narrowed. "Where did you get that money, old man? Did you steal it?" "I no steal nothing." Jose's voice rose for the first time, anger flashing in his eyes. "I work 40 years. I save. I sacrifice. For my family." "Prove it," Blackfield demanded. "Show me bank records. Show me where this money came from." Jose fumbled with his pockets, pulling out bank statements, withdrawal slips, pay stubs dating back months. The evidence was all there. Small deposits, careful savings, the accumulated result of a lifetime of honest work. But Blackfield barely glanced at the papers. "Forged," he declared. "Has to be. Security, escort this man out before he tries to rob us." But just as the guards reached for Jose's arms, the showroom door chimed, and the person who walked in would change everything. The security guards froze. Blackfield's mouth fell open. Every customer in the showroom turned to stare, because walking through the door, casual in jeans and a Liverpool training jacket, was one of the most recognizable faces in English football. Diogo Jota had come to surprise his father. "Pai!" Diogo called out in Portuguese, his face lighting up when he saw Jose. Then his expression changed as he took in the scene, his father surrounded by security guards, papers scattered on the floor, the look of humiliation in the old man's eyes. "What's going on here?" Diogo's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. José's face transformed. Gone was the uncertain old man being bullied by a car dealer. Suddenly he stood taller, his eyes bright with pride and love. "Diogo, you came." "Of course I came, Pai. You said you had a surprise for me." Diogo looked around the showroom, his gaze settling on Blackfield. "Is there a problem here?" Blackfield's brain was desperately trying to process what he was seeing. The old man was Diogo Jota's father? The Portuguese international? Liverpool's star forward? The man whose transfer had made headlines across Europe? Mr. Jota," Blackfield stammered. We didn't know." "Didn't know what?" Diogo's voice was dangerously quiet. "That my father is a human being who deserves basic respect." José put his hand on his son's arm. "Is okay, Diogo. I just come to buy you car. For your birthday." Diogo's eyes softened as he looked at his father, then hardened again as he turned back to Blackfield. "And what exactly was the problem with that?" "Sir, there's been a misunderstanding," Blackfield said, his earlier arrogance completely gone. "Your father, he wasn't exactly clear about who he was." "Clear about who he was?" Diogo stepped closer to Blackfield. "He's my father. That's the only thing that should matter. But apparently, that's not clear enough for you." The other customers were watching this drama unfold like a train wreck. Some were filming on their phones. Others were whispering amongst themselves. This was going to be all over social media within the hour. "What did you say to my father?" Diogo demanded. Blackfield looked around desperately. There was confusion about his ability to afford. Diogo's voice rose. "This man worked 2 jobs for 30 years to provide for his family. He's never missed a payment on anything in his life. He raised 3 lire on wages you probably spend on lunch." José squeezed his son's arm. "Diogo, please. Is okay?" "No, Pai, it's not okay." Diogo turned back to Blackfield. "What exactly did you say to him?" Blackfield's mouth opened and closed like a fish. How could he explain? How could he admit what he'd done? "He called me filthy old man," José said quietly. "He say I steal money. He say you not successful." The temperature in the showroom seemed to drop 10 degrees. Diogo's face went completely still. "You said what?" "Mr. Jota, please understand, we get all kinds of people in here and sometimes what? Sometimes you judge people by their clothes instead of their character? That's not... do you know what my father did yesterday?" Diogo asked, his voice carrying across the silent showroom. "He worked a 12-hour shift, laying foundation for a children's hospital. At 70 years old, because he believes in building things that matter." Blackfield was sweating now. "Sir, I deeply apologize." "To whom?" Diogo interrupted. "To me? Because I'm famous? Or to my father? Because he's a human being who deserves respect?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Around the showroom, other customers were beginning to look uncomfortable. When had they last stood up for someone being treated unfairly? When had they last chosen compassion over convenience? "Both," Blackfield said finally. "To both of you. Start with my father," Diogo said. "He's the one you owe an apology to." Blackfield turned to José, his face red with embarrassment. "Sir, I sincerely apologize. My behavior was completely unacceptable." José looked at the man who had humiliated him, then at his son, then back at Blackfield. "You apologize because he is famous. But what about other old men who come here? What about other fathers who save money for their children? Do they deserve this treatment?" The question cut deep. Blackfield realized that José wasn't just asking for a personal apology, he was asking for something much bigger. "You're right," Blackfield said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're absolutely right. Pai wanted to buy me a car for my birthday," Diogo said. "He's been saving for months, working extra shifts, missing meals, all so he could give his son something special." "Diogo," José protested, "you tell too much." "No, Pai. He needs to understand what he almost destroyed today." Diogo turned back to Blackfield. "My father has given me everything. Not money. We never had much of that. But he gave me work ethic. He gave me humility. He gave me the understanding that success means nothing if you use it to look down on others." The showroom was completely silent now. Even the salespeople had stopped pretending to work. Everyone was listening to this lesson in humanity being delivered between the Ferraris and Lamborghinis. What kind of car was he looking to buy? Blackfield asked quietly. Nothing too expensive, Jose said. Maybe nice sedan, something reliable. Safe. Blackfield looked around his showroom, at the Bentleys and Maseratis, the Porsches and Aston Martins. Then he looked at Jose, this humble man who had worked 40 years and saved £50,000 to buy his son a birthday present. Mr. Jota, Blackfield said to Jose, would you allow me to show you some options? Jose looked at his son uncertainly. Diogo nodded, encouragingly. Okay, Jose said. We look. What happened next surprised everyone in the showroom. Instead of leading Jose to the least expensive section, Blackfield walked him to the center of the floor, where a stunning silver Aston Martin DB11 sat like a sculpture. This, Blackfield said, is what I'd recommend for your son. Jose's eyes widened. Is too much. I cannot afford. Actually, Blackfield said, his voice stronger now. I think we can work something out. Diogo raised an eyebrow. What kind of something? Blackfield took a deep breath. This was a moment that would define him, not just as a businessman, but as a human being. Mr. Jota, Jose, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you a demonstration that people can change, that businesses can be better. What do you mean? Jose asked. I mean, this car is yours, for exactly £50,000. The showroom erupted in gasps. The Aston Martin DB11 retailed for nearly £200,000. Blackfield was essentially giving away £150,000. Sir, one of his salespeople whispered urgently. You can't. I can and I will, Blackfield said firmly. This is what's right. Jose shook his head. Is too much. I cannot accept charity. It's not charity, Blackfield said. It's justice, and it's education, for me and everyone else in this room. Diogo looked at Blackfield with newfound respect. Why would you do this? Because your father taught me something today. He taught me that dignity isn't something you can afford or not afford. It's something you either have or you don't. And he has it. I almost lost mine. Jose was staring at the beautiful car, tears forming in his eyes. You sure? This is really okay? More than okay, Blackfield said. It's necessary. But the story wasn't over yet, because what happened next would turn this moment of generosity into something even more powerful. Mr. Blackfield, Diogo said, I have a proposition for you. What kind of proposition? My father doesn't need an Aston Martin. He's 70 years old and he takes the bus to work. But he does need something else. What's that? He needs to know that his sacrifice meant something, and I need to know that this experience will help other people. Blackfield looked confused. I'm not sure I understand. Keep the Aston Martin, Diogo said. But use this moment to start something better. Like what? Jose stepped forward. I think he mean respect program. For all customers. Rich, poor, young, old. All people deserve respect. Diogo nodded. Exactly. Use this moment to train your staff differently. To treat every customer like they might be someone's father, someone's child, someone who matters. Blackfield was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. A respect program. I like that. And, Diogo continued, donate the money my father was going to spend to a charity that helps elderly workers. People like him who are still working because they have to, not because they want. Jose's face lit up. Yes, this is a good idea. Blackfield looked around his showroom, at his staff, his customers, the cameras that were still recording. You know what? Let's do better than that. What do you mean? Let's make it £100,000. 50 from your father's savings, 50 from me. And let's start a foundation that helps elderly workers afford reliable transportation. The showroom erupted in applause. Customers who had been silent observers were now part of something bigger. Staff members were wiping tears from their eyes. And Jose was looking at his son with a pride that no amount of money could buy. Pay, Diogo said softly. You came here to buy me a car. Instead, you gave everyone here something much more valuable. What is that? A reminder of what really matters. 6 months later, the Jose Jota Foundation for Elderly Workers had helped over 200 people afford reliable transportation to and from work. Blackfield Luxury Motors had implemented a respect training program that had become a model for dealerships across the country. And Jose Jota had become something of a local celebrity. Not because of his famous son, but because of his own quiet dignity and strength. The story had gone viral, of course. Videos of the confrontation and its resolution had been viewed millions of times. But more importantly, it had started conversations about respect, about dignity, about the way we treat Lel who seemed different from us. Jose never did get that car for Diogo's birthday. Instead, he got something better, the knowledge that his love for his son had helped create something that would benefit hundreds of other families. And Diogo? He learned that his father's greatest gift wasn't the car he'd tried to buy, but the lesson he'd taught everyone who witnessed their story. "You know, Pi," Diogo said as they walked out of the dealership that day, "you're the most successful person I know, but I am just construction worker," Jose protested. "No," Diogo said, putting his arm around his father's shoulders. "You're a man who raised a son who knows the difference between success and achievement. You're a man whose dignity can't be bought or sold. You're a man who turned a moment of humiliation into a movement of hope." Jose smiled. "You think too much of your old Pi." "I think exactly what I should think," Diogo replied. "That you're my hero." As they walked away, neither of them noticed a small plaque that would be installed next to the showroom entrance the following week. In honor of Diogo Jota, who reminded us that respect is not a luxury item, it's a basic human necessity. And every customer who entered Blackfield Luxury Motors from that day forward would see that plaque and remember that dignity is something we all carry with us, regardless of what we can afford to drive home. Because in the end, that's what Diogo Jota had really come to buy that day, not a car, but a memory. A moment when he could show his son that love doesn't require a price tag, and that the greatest gifts are the ones that change how we see each other. The car was just the excuse. The real purchase was in humanity, and that turned out to be priceless. 3 years later, when Jose finally retired from construction work, the workers on his final job site presented him with a gift. A small silver model of an Aston Martin DB11, engraved with the words, "To a man who taught us that true luxury is treating others with dignity." Jose kept it on his mantelpiece, next to a photo of him and Diogo at the dealership. Not because he ever wanted the real car, but because it reminded him of the day his son learned the most important lesson of all, that success means nothing if you forget where you came from and who helped you get there. And every time Jose looked at that little silver car, he smiled. Because he knew that sometimes the best gifts are the ones you don't receive, but the ones you give to the world by simply being yourself. Awareness discussion. My friends, this story goes far beyond a car dealership or a famous footballer. It's about something we encounter every single day, the way we judge people based on their appearance, their accent, their clothes, or their social status. How many times have we made assumptions about someone's worth based on how they look? How often do we treat people differently because we think they can't afford what we're selling, or because they don't fit our idea of a valuable customer? Diogo Jota's story is the story of millions of immigrant fathers, elderly workers, and people who don't speak perfect English. They're dismissed, disrespected, and devalued every day, simply because others can't see past surface appearances to recognize their dignity and worth. Sebastian Blackfield's initial reaction wasn't unusual, it was typical. We live in a world where respect is often treated like a luxury item, reserved for those who can afford it. But Jose proved that dignity isn't something you buy, it's something you carry. The most powerful moment in this story isn't when Diogo Jota walks in, or when Blackfield offers the expensive car. It's when Jose, despite being humiliated, still stands firm in his love for his son and his belief in doing the right thing. That's real strength. And here's what we can all learn. You don't need to be the child of a celebrity to deserve respect. You don't need to be wealthy to have dignity. You don't need to speak perfect English to be valued as a human being. Every elderly person working past retirement age, because they have to, every immigrant parent saving money for their children's future, every person who looks different from what we expect, they all deserve to be treated with the same respect we'd want for our own family members. The question each of us must ask is, when we see someone being treated unfairly, do we intervene, or do we look away because it's not our problem? When we're in positions of power, whether as business owners, managers, or simply as customers with influence, do we use that power to lift others up, or to protect our own comfort? Diogo Jota didn't go to that dealership to teach anyone a lesson. He went there as a father who loved his son. But his quiet dignity in the face of prejudice became a masterclass in human worth that changed everyone who witnessed it. If this story touched your heart, Please hit the like button to help it reach others who need this reminder about treating people with dignity and respect. Subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that prove ordinary people doing ordinary things with extraordinary love can change the world. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that respect isn't earned by wealth or status, but by simply being human. And comment below, tell us about a time when someone judged you unfairly, or when you stood up for someone being mistreated. Your story might inspire someone else to do the same. Remember, we all have the power to be like Diogo Jota in this story, to stand up for our loved ones and for what's right. But more importantly, we all have the opportunity to be like Jota, to face prejudice with dignity, to turn humiliation into education, and to show the world that true worth comes from character, not from circumstances. Every person you meet is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's hero. Treat them accordingly. The world needs more Jotas, people who maintain their dignity even when others try to take it away. But it also needs more people willing to stand up and say this isn't right when they see injustice happening. Which one will you be today?